Consider the gravity of a missed Sunday. It's the first Sunday of the new month, the job list day. Except Meera is at her sister's house this weekend. There was a family thing, unexpected but not unusual, and she didn't bring the notebook. And the Sunday afternoon passed, and then Monday came, and then the salary landed on Tuesday, and she thought, I'll do the job list tonight. Tonight became Wednesday. Wednesday became the weekend, and by the time she remembered, 2 weeks had passed. The money had been arriving without instructions again. Life had moved back in. The familiar feeling had returned. Not as bad as before, not quite, but recognizable. And Meera sat there with a thought she didn't want to have. What if the job list only works when she remembers to do it? What if the whole system depends on her memory, her motivation, her Sunday afternoons being free? And when those things aren't available, everything collapses? Because that would mean she hasn't built a system at all. She's just built a more organized version of willpower. And willpower, as she already knows, gets tired. My name is Nick, and over the last 3 episodes, we've watched Meera go from not knowing where her money went, to tracking it honestly, to building a system that gave every dollar a job. Real progress, genuine, meaningful progress. And then she forgot for 1 month, and the system stopped working. This episode is about that moment, because I think it's the moment that determines whether any financial change actually lasts or quietly resets. The question isn't how do I build a better plan? The question is, how do I build something that works even when I don't? Here's something I think about a lot. There's a version of personal finance that treats every month like a fresh battle, a new decision about where to save, a new moment of discipline at the supermarket, a new Sunday afternoon with the notebook and the pen and the deliberate intention to be good with money this month. And that version works. It genuinely works when the conditions are right, when you're rested, when life is cooperative, when nothing unexpected has taken over your Sunday. But here's the problem with a system that requires perfect conditions. Life is not reliably cooperative. Work gets busy, family visits happen, illness happens, grief happens, weeks blur into other weeks. And the system that depends on your best self, your most rested, most intentional, most disciplined self, quietly falls apart every time your best self isn't available. Which, if you're a normal human being living a normal human life, is fairly often. We treat willpower like it's an infinite well, but it's actually more like a phone battery. By 7 p.m. on Tuesday, you're at 4%. And 4% is not enough to power a financial revolution. It's barely enough to get you through the front door. This is the ceiling of willpower. And almost every financial plan hits it eventually. Not because the plan was wrong, because the plan was powered by a resource that runs out. And the solution isn't a better plan. It isn't more disciplined. It isn't setting up a reminder on your phone to do the job list on Sunday. The solution is to remove yourself from the equation entirely. Not to stop caring, not to disengage, but to build something that moves the important money before your conscious mind has any say in the matter. Something that works on the days you forgot. On those days, you were too tired. On the days life offered much better things to do than sit at a kitchen table with a notebook. That is what automation is. Not a financial tool, a psychological one. So, what does automation actually look like in Meera's situation? And why is it different from just being more organized? Here's the mechanism, and it's almost embarrassingly simple once you see it. On payday, the moment the salary lands, a pre-arranged transfer happens automatically. Before Meera sees the money, before she checks the balance, before she has any sense of what's arrived. A fixed amount moves to a savings account. Not a large amount, not at first. Something she calculated in advance, on one of those good Sundays, when she was calm and intentional. An amount she knows she can live without, and then it's gone. Not spent, not available. Not sitting in the checking account waiting to be recruited by a Tuesday evening takeaway or a subscription renewal. It moved before she could see it. And what you never see, you never miss. It's the psychological equivalent of out of sight, out of mind. If the money doesn't participate in the daily noise of your checking account, it doesn't participate in your daily temptations either. It's safe because it's invisible. This is a foundational insight. The brain's relationship with money is not purely rational. It is in part visual. What appears in the account feels available. What never appears feels absent. And what feels absent doesn't create a pull towards spending. Automation doesn't change how much money Meera has. It changes what she sees. And what she sees is what she spends. The job list from episode 3 was a good system. It worked when she showed up for it. Automation is a better system because it doesn't require her to show up. The savings move on payday. Whether Meera is at her sister's house, or working late, or dealing with something that has nothing to do with finances, the system doesn't care. It runs. And what remains? The money left in the checking account after the automatic transfer. That is Meera's spending money for the month. All of it. No tracking required. No job list is needed. Because the important job has already been done automatically, she can spend what's left without guilt. Because everything that needed to be moved has already moved. This is the shift. From discipline to infrastructure. From willpower to architecture. From a system that depends on her to a system that works without her. And once that transfer is set up, once it's running, the cognitive load of money management drops dramatically. There are no more decisions about whether to save this month. The decision was made once, set up once, and now it runs every payday without asking permission. Now, I want to stop here for a second, because I think there's a version of this that sounds almost too simple, or maybe too obvious. Set up an automatic transfer on payday. That's the advice? And yes, mechanically that's what it is. The mechanism is not complicated. But here's what I've noticed. Most people who know about automatic savings don't actually do it. Not consistent. Not in a way that sticks. And there's a specific reason why. One that has nothing to do with not knowing it works. The most common reason people don't set up automatic savings, even when they know it works, is a fear that sounds rational but usually isn't. What if I need that money? And I understand instincts. The money moving automatically feels like losing control, like tying your own hands, like creating a problem for the future you if something unexpected happens. But here's what that fear almost always gets backwards. The money that moves automatically is not lost. It is in a savings account with your name on it. It can come back if there is a genuine emergency. It is not spent. It is not gone. It is simply not visible in the daily account, which means it is not available to the small, habitual, invisible spending that drains the checking account every month. The real risk isn't automatic transfer. The real risk is the money sitting in the checking account, visible and available, waiting for a tired evening, or a convenient app, or a subscription that forgot to ask permission. Visible money gets spent. Moved money is saved. Fear is usually pointing in the wrong direction. Most people fear tying their hands. But in a world designed to make you spend, tying your hands is the only way to keep your grip on the wheel. Automation isn't losing control. It's delegating it to your best self. The second reason people don't automate is that choosing the amount feels difficult. How much? Too much and it feels painful. Too little and it feels pointless. Meera solved this the same way she solved the job list, by starting with something that felt genuinely manageable. $50 a month. That was the first automated transfer. Not because $50 was the right amount long term, because $50 was the amount she could set up and then not undo a week later when she convinced herself she needed it back. Starting small is not a failure of ambition. It is a strategy for building a system that survives contact with real life. Rick Ferry, who spent decades helping ordinary people build portfolios that actually lasted, has a principle he applies to investing that I think lives equally powerfully here. He calls it simplicity, automation, hibernation. 3 words. Set it up simply, make it automatic. Then leave it alone. The people who try to be clever, who adjust every month, who pause contributions when things feel tight, who manually decide whether to save each payday, almost always save less over time than the people who set up a transfer and forgot about it. Not because they're less disciplined, because they removed a decision that willpower would eventually lose. So, what actually changes for Meera once the automation is running? The practical change is obvious. Money moves on payday without her involvement. Savings grow without requiring a good Sunday afternoon. But psychological change is more interesting, and I think it's the most important one. When saving was something Meera had to actively do each month, something that required memory and intention and the right conditions, it felt like a sacrifice. Every month she saved felt like a month she'd chosen to deprive herself. When saving is something that happens automatically, something that doesn't require a decision because the decision was already made, it stops feeling like sacrifice. It starts feeling like background infrastructure. Like the water bill. It goes out. Life continues. And this shift, from active sacrifice to background infrastructure, quietly removes most of the psychological friction around saving. Meera isn't fighting herself every month to do the right thing. She set up the right thing once, and now it runs. The job list from episode 3 is still there. She still uses it on the Sundays when she can. It still helps. But it's no longer the only thing standing between her and the drain. Even on Sundays she doesn't do it. The most important money has already moved. The system no longer depends on her being at her best. And a system that doesn't require you to be at your best is the only kind of system that actually survives in real life. 3 months in, the savings account has a number in it that Meera has never had before. Not large, not dramatic, about $180. But here's the thing about that $180. She didn't earn it through exceptional discipline. She didn't achieve it through a difficult month of cutting everything. It appeared quietly, automatically, without her having to fight for it. And that feeling, the feeling of money accumulating without constant effort, is new. And it is, she realizes, what the whole point of this was always supposed to feel like. So back to that missed Sunday, the family visits, the forgotten notebook, the 2 weeks that slipped by before Meera noticed. In any previous version of this story, that missed Sunday would have been the moment everything reset, the plan collapsed, the familiar feeling returned. And Meera went back to the beginning with a slightly heavier sense of, I just can't seem to make this stick. But this time, the $50 moved on payday anyway, quietly, automatically, without asking whether she was ready. The missed Sunday cost her 2 weeks of the job list. It cost her some intentionality about where the remaining money went. But it didn't cost her the savings, because the savings no longer depended on her. That's the difference between a plan and a system. A plan needs you. A system just needs to be set up once. And Meera, for the first time, has a system. The drain is finally plugged. Not by a finger held against the hole, but by a pipe that redirected the flow. The struggle has ended, but the growth is just beginning. Before money can grow, it first has to stay. And now, it stays. Even on Sunday she forgets. So, I want to ask you something. If you set up an automatic transfer for tomorrow's payday, what amount would feel manageable enough that you wouldn't undo it a week later? Not ambitious, just survive. Drop it in the comments, because I think the answer tells you exactly where to start. And if you want to know what happens next for Meera, because this is where the story starts to change in a way she didn't expect, subscribe. The savings account now has a number in it, a small one, but real. And one morning, about 4 months after the automation started running, Meera looks at that number and asks a question she has never asked before. Not where did my money go? She knows that answer now. Not why doesn't it stay? It stays now. Something is different. Something quieter. And the question, and what she does with it, is what episode 5 is about.